And welcome back to H Invests. So today we're going to be talking about Deliveroo, the fast-growing online food delivery service that is in a very lucrative market. It seems to be growing very quickly, particularly with some of the tailwinds we've seen from the pandemic. They garnered a lot of attention recently because they IPO'd just last month on the 31st of March. However, they had one of the worst initial trading days the London Stock Exchange has ever seen, falling 26% all the way down to 287p per share, and they've now fallen a further 7%. So the question is Deliveroo a good business? That's what we're going to be analysing today. Do the shares look like they're a good buy at current prices, or should we wait it out, see what the market does, and potentially invest in something else? I hope you guys enjoy the analysis. Okay. So who are Deliveroo? One of the best things about Deliveroo is their business model is really easy and intuitive to understand. So basically what they do is they provide a service for restaurants to outsource their delivery, and they provide a delivery service to customers that want to order from any kind of restaurant that they want. And they have an app which organizes this all together, and then they hire riders to go out and they deliver this food. So if you're from the US, it's very similar to DoorDash. Deliveroo is kind of the British equivalent of DoorDash. And the whole story behind Deliveroo was their founder, Will Shu, was working as an investment banker in the London office of Morgan Stanley. And the problem that he saw with his lifestyle was that there was very little options for somebody that wanted good quality like fast foods to order to your home after you've had a long day at the office. So that is why he founded Deliveroo. And as I mentioned previously, there's been a lot of discussion on Deliveroo because the pandemic has been a massive tailwind for them. So obviously we've seen business restrictions off the back of COVID-19 pandemic. A lot of restaurants, they've been completely shut or barred from doing in-person service. So a lot of them have relied heavily on Deliveroo. And this has definitely accelerated the growth of the company and is a major talking point for the investors. I mentioned that Deliveroo has a really simple business model to understand. And one of the great things about it is most of us have been consumers of these food delivery services, whether it's DoorDash or Deliveroo or Uber Eats or Just Eat. We've all used them at some point. And it's very easy to get into the eyes of the consumer and really understand the business directly. So that's what we're going to do now. We're going to jump right into the Deliveroo app and also have a look at some of their competitors and see how the apps compare. Okay, so here we have the Deliveroo app. This is the kind of like main interface when you go and open up the app. I'm sure you guys have seen this before. And I really like the way that it's laid out. They've got all the different meals going into different categories, and then you can also search any keywords to find out what is taking your fancy food-wise. It's clear that they're really promoting their grocery section because this is the first thing that comes up, and it's in the middle of the screen when you open the app. More on that later, but I thought that was really, really interesting. So this is the Uber Eats app. It's pretty similar layout to Deliveroo. You've got all of the different options up there. Again, they are promoting their kind of grocery sections here, and they have real detail in terms of what you can order. And then you've got the search function down here as well. So these apps all operate pretty similarly. You've got Just Eat, which is kind of the third main one in this oligopoly structure that we see in London. And it looks pretty good. I mean, I don't think that this Just Eat app is as sharp as the other two. So I'd give more points to Deliveroo and Uber Eats. But it's still pretty good nonetheless. It's interesting though, because when you look on the App Store, Just Eat is actually rated the highest at 4.8 stars, which is a really good rating. Obviously that rating encompasses more than just the design of the app. That would also include things like, the promptness of the delivery, like the quality of the food, just how well the app works, etc., etc. But both Uber Eats and Deliveroo were rated 4.7 stars. So for three companies where the functionality of the app is really important, they're all getting good ratings from that. So it's a good sign for all three companies, and it's a good sign that people like Deliveroo's app and are giving it a high rating. Another interesting thing to note from an advertising standpoint is these companies, they have a lot of self-advertising, right? Because these drivers, they're going out on their motorbikes, on their push bikes, and they are cycling around, driving around, delivering this food. So you'll see, them with the big delivery boxes on their back. And of all the three, I definitely see Deliveroo the most frequently in London. And that's where about 50% of their revenue comes from. So that's why we have so much of a focus on the UK. I think Uber Eats, you do see them as well, but their branding doesn't stand out as much because it's much more black and white. And Just Eat has a very colourful logo scheme, so you do see them, but you don't see them as frequently as Deliveroo. And having all of these drivers driving around with like the bright green boxes on their back really gives them an advantage of a load of free advertising that people will see in London every week. And it really reinforces their brand and keeps people in the loop about Deliveroo. Okay, so the best and most simple way to think about Deliveroo's business model is almost like this three-sided marketplace where you have the customers of Deliveroo who go onto the app to buy the food. Then you've got the partners of Deliveroo, which are like the restaurants who pay to outsource delivery service. And then you've also got the riders or the drivers who basically deliver the food for Deliveroo. And when you look at these three things, Deliveroo has revenue coming in from the customers and from the partners, and then it has costs going out to the drivers. So the core of its operating profit is basically going to be all of the revenue it can obtain from sales through the app of buying food and the fee that comes with that, plus the fees that it makes from the outsourcing that the restaurant pays for, minus what it costs them to contract the drivers to drive around. And that's a really key point about the drivers actually, is that they are not contracted, right? It's 0 hours. They are effectively free to work as and when they want. So they have to keep their employees immensely happy because there's no stickiness, right? Like with other companies, if you have employees that are unhappy, they might tell you. It will take a bit of time for you to realize exactly what's going on in the organization to correct any misjudgment you might have with the employees. But with Deliveroo, the drivers are not contracted, right? Like it's very easy for them to just say, oh, I'm not earning enough money with Deliveroo. I'm not being treated as well as I should be. And boom, they can go off to Uber Eats or Just Eat, or they can go off and they can go and do another job right then and there. So there's not a lot of driving loyalty. And that is a bit of a risk that Deliveroo faces, right? Because the less drivers that want to come to Deliveroo, the more Deliveroo are going to have to pay for those drivers, and that will drive down their margins. So you have that side of it. On the customer side of it, again, because you have all of these delivery services trying to establish themselves in the market, it is pretty competitive and you don't have much stickiness as a customer or loyalty to Deliveroo. We'll talk more about that in the economic moat section and how Deliveroo are trying to establish the competitive advantage there. But yeah, what you want to think about is that as a customer, like it'll only take one bad experience to switch, right? Because it's very, very easy to just go, like forget Deliveroo, it was a bad experience, let's switch. And that's the thing about takeaway food is people really, really want to get it right. Like I see Deliveroo as having two main types of customers. They have the customers who, they have takeaway as a special occasion. It's something that they say, right, let's celebrate this, or it's a nice Saturday night in. It's something they do as a treat. Or it's what the type of customer that Will Shue envisaged for Deliveroo when he was first starting it up. The young professional working long hours, just wants some nice food, quick, convenient. My point is that if the food goes wrong for either of those customers, if it takes too long, if it's cold, if the food provider is not up to standards, but Deliveroo was recommending them as an offer, then they're going to get pretty annoyed at Deliveroo pretty quickly. And it won't take them long to say, like, I don't need to rely on Deliveroo again. I can just go to another company, like Uber Eats or Just Eat. And that's exactly what happened with me. Like, I had a Deliveroo account and it got hacked. There was a lot of money like stolen from my bank, and it was all sorted out. Deliveroo had a good customer service team to sort it out, but it only takes one of those one things to say, look, Deliveroo, they made a mistake, and they allowed my account to get hacked, even though they handled it well afterwards. I'm going to say, because Uber Eats can offer me such a similar service, I'm going to go to Uber Eats instead. And then it's the same thing with the partners, right? Like Deliveroo have to establish a really good relationship with those restaurants, and they have to make sure they're really keeping them happy, not overcharging them, because it's all too easy for the restaurants to go and work with another partner and they're not too reliant on Deliveroo for the service. Okay, so let's take a quick look at Deliveroo's Q1 trading update. So this was something they released on the 15th of April, just 2 weeks after they did their IPO. And you can see some really amazing numbers here. So in total, you can see their gross transaction value doubled. Same with orders, right? Went from 33 million to 71 million. And then also gross transaction value per order, that also increased, which is looking really good, right? Because people are spending more on the app each time they order. You can see the split here. I already mentioned it was like roughly 50% UK and 50% international, but you can see that, and it's been pretty consistent growth among both of the segments, slightly more in the UK, but growth nonetheless. And look, this is a key pattern though, is that I said that Deliveroo has a massive tailwind from COVID, right? And they have, but obviously with COVID, everybody is getting vaccinated. We're seeing restrictions lifting pretty quickly in the UK. So it's currently now the 5th of May. On the 12th of April, restaurants opened outside. Coming in on the 17th of May, restaurants will open inside, and they'll be pretty much back to fully functional. And this COVID pandemic tailwind, it might go away. So you can see this in the numbers. If we break it down quarterly, you can see, so Q1 2020, so this was when like the pandemic, it hadn't really started yet. It was pretty much business as usual up to kind of mid-March. So all of Q1 was pretty much captured in normal times. And then you saw quite a lot of growth up to Q2 when we had like our first lockdown. People were ordering more takeaways when they couldn't go out for dinner. And then you kind of see it stagnate a lot. And I do think there is an element of this where like people will just inherently order more takeaways in the winter, like particularly when it's really cold in the UK. They don't want to go out and explore and stuff. And then in the summer, they will eat out more and enjoy the city, and they'll want to like sit indoors less, right? But a huge part of this like slow growth here was that the fact we had the easing of the lockdown restrictions in the summer. Everybody wanted to go out and eat. We had a eat out to help out scheme in the UK where the government would subsidise your meal. And then we went back into lockdown Q4 2020, Q1 2021, and you can see the growth really accelerate. So that's a potential risk with Deliveroo, is that like whilst we've seen this amazing like impressive growth, there is a risk that some of this was temporary, and it might be quite hard to quantify like what percentage of this is going to keep growing, because obviously you've had a lot of people get new exposure to the app, and like they might stay on the app after COVID ends and still have sales from it. But then you've also got a lot of people that might have used this much more temporarily, just as this kind of like second grade substitute for going out for a meal. So it's really hard to say. Yeah, and it's good to see that the monthly frequency of people using the app is about 3.3. It's grown a little bit from 3 last year, but that suggested that their retention of customers is pretty high, and is a really positive sign for the business. So we saw by taking a glance at Deliveroo's app earlier that they're also going into the food delivery space, and this is a really bullish point. I think there's a lot of potential here. So basically the whole idea is rapid food delivery, right? So you want your groceries in 20-30 minutes, Deliveroo will do that for you. So here in the UK, we very much we have a culture of like food delivery, if you like plan it days in advance, if you need a big shop. But these services that provide rapid food delivery, i.e. like I need ingredients X, Y, Z to cook for tonight and I don't want to go to the shop, they are still very much young and growing. And it's really good to see Deliveroo get into this space because I think there's a lot of potential. So they've already got a pretty good partnership with Waitrose, which is like a higher end supermarket. So about 13 million people already have access to that. So that's about 20% of the UK's population. When I say that, that's what I mean. Like 13 million people are, within a distance that Deliveroo covers to pick up their groceries. And this kind of service will be particularly popular with all the young Will Shoes or investment bankers of the world, because it's very much time-saving, convenient, but if people want to stay healthy, stay fit, and still be on their toes, it's a really good alternative to ready meals. And it is also still cheaper than going to the conventional Deliveroo and ordering a takeaway. You're going to know exactly what's in your food, but it's just very, very convenient to do it. And also the fees look relatively cheap, right? Looking at the app, like most of the fees I saw for proximity were like £2 delivery charge, £2.50 delivery charge. It looks very, very sustainable from that perspective. One thing to say though is if we are seeing a lot of young professionals using this app, like Waitrose might not be the best choice because it's very much like a high-end supermarket and a lot of young professionals view it as like very expensive. We're trying to like save money. So it might not be the best option. They might not want to use it, but Deliveroo is expanding to many other stores quite quickly. They have Sainsbury's, which is much more of a mid-tier supermarket, and that is already covering 100 stores in the UK. 30% of the population will be able to order rapid grocery deliveries through Sainsbury's, which is really, really good. And they're also working on a partnership with Aldi at the moment, which is very much bulk food, cheap food. If they're covering Waitrose, Sainsbury's and Aldi, that's like high tier, mid tier and lower tier all covered. So I think that could be a great success. They're still very much in the early stages of developing this pipeline, but it's clearly something that they're working on and clearly something that I think is going to be big for business going forward, particularly because it's one of the first options when you open the app to what you can select with your services through Deliveroo. Okay, so how does Deliveroo stand up on my valuation of whether it has an economic moat? So the most prominent example of an economic moat with Deliveroo would be the network effect, right? And it's like this two-sided, almost three-sided network effect where you have the more restaurants that Deliveroo list, the more customers it's going to attract, right? Because they've got loads and loads of options. The more customers it attracts, the more restaurants are going to want to be on Deliveroo because they're going to make more and more orders through Deliveroo and it's worth paying them for the service. But then also the more riders they will attract because there'll be loads of orders popping up in the local area and riders won't have to travel so far between orders. So there's a really powerful like three-sided network effect going on with Deliveroo. But the thing is that like because Deliveroo and Uber Eats and Just Eat, they like all operate very similar business models. All three have this network effect and I couldn't really see a distinct advantage moving between one or the other. But it might create some like barrier to entry for new companies coming in. You could say that there's a little bit of a scale advantage as well, meaning that like now the company is big, it can just leverage its fixed costs. But there's such like asset-light businesses, like all you need is like an app. You're like outsourcing the drivers, you're like outsourcing the people that prep the food, because obviously they're restaurants, right? So scale advantages aren't that prominent. And then the key disadvantage when looking at this from an economic moat standpoint is very, very low switching costs. As I said, like you can just like get out your phone and be like, oh, Deliveroo don't have what I want. I'm going to go to Uber Eats or I'm going to go to Just Eat. And that is a bit of a problem for these apps because there's also not going to be that much customer loyalty. As I said, if you had a bad experience like I did with Deliveroo, you can just change to another company pretty easy. Deliveroo, they did have some strategies to mitigate this, which I think is really, really good. They have like certain promotions that you can register for. If you like order through Deliveroo, you can get like a chance to win like a year's supply of Taco Bell or a year's supply of McDonald's, which I thought was pretty funny. And that will certainly incentivize some people to sign up for the rewards. They have a subscription model as well, which might help some people to be like sticky and loyal to Deliveroo. But the way the cost structure is set up, I'm not sure how optimal it's going to be. So it's $11.49 a month for delivery orders over £10. That might work for someone who's using the service really regularly, like a Will Shoe banker type person. But for someone who is just using it occasionally as like a special treat, I feel like most people, like, they use takeaways like once a fortnight, like once a month. If the cost of the delivery service is usually about £3 to £5, it's not really making economic sense for them to use the subscription. They also have this group membership, which I think will work a lot better, particularly for students. They're all ordering together, they can save. It's only $3.49 a month. And that will also work for, young professionals that are collaborating and living together. So Deliveroo, they do have that. They do have some strategies to like try and create some customer loyalty. I think they could try and almost like gamify their app a little bit more, try to do like even more rewards, try to really get people invested into Deliveroo. They're doing that by trying to incorporate the best experience possible, but as I said, it only takes one little thing for them to let down. So that's Deliveroo's economic moat. I think they have some prevalence of an economic moat through the network effect, but I don't think they have the same striving competitive advantage over Uber Eats and Just Eat that I'd really like to see to give them a wide economic moat rating. Okay, and what are some of the downsides or risks that we might see that might not make Deliveroo the best investment? Well, the first one to consider is obviously the end of the COVID-19 restrictions. Everybody is desperate to go out to the pub, desperate to like go out and eat and socialize, and particularly that is coming into the summertime anyway. The last thing that a lot of people will be wanting to do is sit inside and have a takeaway. So the temporary tailwinds that Deliveroo got from COVID is probably not going to be there anymore. And obviously Deliveroo know this, right? Like they said it in their Q1 update, that we might see the acceleration of our growth slow down, but it's very difficult to know to what extent. And as I said before, there are kind of a few things going on here where like there might be some people that just temporarily use the app because it was the next best thing to go out for a meal. But then there also might be a lot of people who weren't introduced to the app before, then discovered it in lockdown, and then when they do fancy a takeaway, then they go and use the app anyway. So it's a bit of a two-sided coin. We'll have to go and see how that one plays out. The other thing I already mentioned was like if they damage the brand, there's low switching costs, and because people they have such a positive connotation with their food, right? And when they're ordering a takeaway, it's like something special because it's quite expensive compared to just like buying a ready meal from a shop. So if it's one bad experience or like one thing that like damages somebody's experience with Deliveroo, then it's very easy for them to like other people to make the switch. And then you also want to be thinking of the ESG risk. So obviously environmental social governance, ethical investing is of the utmost importance to both the individual investor and the institutional investors, right? Like institutions, because they have to listen to what the market wants, and what the market wants is like, as more people are transitioning to making more ethical investment decisions, particularly the millennial generation Y that are coming in, we've got some more money to invest. They're really thinking about ESG. And one of the things with Deliveroo you have to think about is that the workers, they don't have so many rights being with Deliveroo because they're not on like a fixed contract. They don't have access to certain type of insurance, like a pension plan. And you have to think like, is this the most ethical way? Because the company doesn't have any long-term responsibility for them. And that's something for Deliveroo to think about going forward, is how do they adapt and change that structure to maybe give a bit more support to their riders, rather than just be, you're temporarily working for us, but like if something happens to you and you can't work, then like there's not that much loyalty or like help that you can get from the company at the moment.